And what sort of support or help do you get from the system, the education system,
Yep.
or the health system for that matter, for Aspergers?
Look, we've been overwhelmed right from the beginning. They have been so good to us. Even before he was actually diagnosed with Aspergers, we had a lady who was a specialist in it actually talking with us, and she knew Sam. She'd already observed him, and she would talk with us about stuff. So when we had parent-teacher interviews, she was at times there. So right from go-get, school were fantastic to us. But when we did get him diagnosed, it actually meant that we had an aide, and they clustered him with just a handful of other children that had different hour allocations, and it actually turned out in his latter years in primary school, I think he had an aide the whole time he was in the classroom with these other children. So, and that felt wonderful because he had this one person to deal with him who knew his whole journey, and that had been tremendous. The flip side when he went to high school was he just didn't get that same amount of support, and so what had been absolutely marvellous in primary school now didn't feel quite so good, because we wondered about how would he cope without that one person who'd been so significant for quite a few years of his life, which he has moved on and has gone well, but it could have been a bit touch and go.
He gets aid time in high school
does.
For a number of his lessons. I'm not entirely sure about the exact number, but I think it's 2 out of 3 English and 2 out of 3 maths, something like that. He gets 4 or 5
Yes.
lessons a week out of 20.
But we've also put him in programs, like there's one called Pathways to Success. So he's dropped one subject to pick up this one, and they do basic maths and basic language. And because he's accessed this, now we've been given the option for when he does exams, he can have an exam reader, he can have extra time if he needs extra time. They work with him to do his assignments and all that kind of stuff. So there is extra help. Also, there's a special needs area at the school that he knows at any point if he needs help, he can go to that place. It's a safe place, it's a good place. Now, it's been fortunate he hasn't really needed or relied on that place, but he knows it's there. As with primary school, there was a place there, and there was a special needs teacher whom he went and saw, I don't know, once a day or something, would have classes with her. That connected him to going to Hibiscus Gardens once a week, where he was connected with an older lady, a nana he called her, and he would read with her once a week. Now, even though primary school's finished and he's officially out of that program, he still visits her once a week, because they've actually connected so beautifully that neither of them wanted to actually part. So he still rides to Hibiscus. So there has been some really, really good support the whole way through. We can't, we've only been in the state system, and they have been wonderful. We haven't really needed to step out of what the state schools have offered us to go to connect with the health department, because what the schools have offered us has been fantastic.
What about the teaching style of the classroom teacher? How do they cope with having Sam in the classroom, or how do they help him in his learning?
I think that we've had some really good teachers, and I think by and large they've been they have been able to quietly correct, and I think that has been important. But they've really either tackled him, either engaged him in his interests, or really been able to motivate and excite him about whatever it is that they're doing. So lots of things that are kind of mysterious, interesting, sciencey, experiments, lots of that sort of stuff. He's been able to love all that sort of stuff, and he's been able to contribute in his own way. Some of the assessment perhaps has been modified a little bit for him, but he's been encouraged to work in groups, even though that's been difficult. I think the teacher, or they've had a teacher aide there working in that group to try to monitor things to make sure that disagreements don't come up. I think the biggest thing is that they've been able to create the classroom as a safe place. And they've been able to create circumstances in the playground so that there's safe options. And so that if things aren't going well, what are we going to do? And a lot of the modification perhaps hasn't been in terms of teaching styles, but specific emphasis for Sam on social skills and on how to deal with difficult situations, how to deal with bullying situations, how to deal with stress and things that make you anxious. So that and I have to say that they've been quite successful. So we're watching a maturity in our boys, so that he's not bursting into tears or crawling under a desk because there's a relief teacher. Because if he did that in high school, it'd be pretty regular because there's so many different teachers. So.
Would there be some key tips you would give teachers to deal with?
We've seen, I don't think there's one particular teaching style that works with these kids. We have seen teachers with such different personalities. They have all become his friend. He loves telling a good story, and so they've allowed time and space for that. And so I think for Sam, they need a lot of time just to listen and care. Once they made that relationship, that was the beginning of everything for him. So from there, gentleness is really important. If it gets too loud and too overwhelming, and he can do with a bit of a noise, we're not a quiet household. If it gets too overwhelming, that's when he shuts down. So he needs to know, this is what I can do now. So if I feel threatened, I know that if I go to my chair and I sit down and I take a deep breath, I might just put my head down on the table, I might just gather myself. Whatever it is, whatever that process is that he needs, they've worked it out and he knows, and he can rattle it off at the top of his head, this is what I need to do. The same in the playground. When the kids started fighting over the cricket game, he needed to know that I can go to the office and that person will look after me, or I can go to this place and I can settle down, I can take a deep breath, and off he would go with his list of things that he needed to do just to settle himself down. So it's not a particular personality, I don't believe. It's not even a different particular teaching style. It's getting to know that child and just helping them just to de-stress, because really it's what it is. They're stressed out of their brains. It's all just overwhelming.
I think, having the place so that there's quiet times.
Yes.
Having quiet discipline.
Yeah, yells are threatening.
Yeah, but most importantly, it is about building that relationship. Having that teacher, knowing that teacher believes in you, and thinks that you're great. Well, he'll work his backside off for someone who believes in him.
Yeah, and at times they do need to correct him. If he's fixated on telling you a story, and the teacher's sitting there marking work, and there's a lineup of kids, he will think nothing of it, of coming to you because he thinks he's the most important person in the world, and coming to you to tell you his story. So a teacher has to be firm, and he will find, and I mean firm, to say, no, Samuel, look at me and listen. This is not appropriate right now. You need to take your turn. So, at times he won't hear that. You've really got to get Samuel, look at me. Then he'll finally kind of go, oh, hello, there's a whole lot of people there. I've just pushed in. He wouldn't have even just noticed that. He had the idea, he wanted to connect with you, so connect, he will. So those boundaries have to be firm with a kid like Sam. And if you've got the relationship with him, then he will accept that. Otherwise, he's just shattered. And he'll go and cry under his desk or curl up in a ball. Once again, that's behaviour we don't see very often at home, but that's behaviour that we hear about at school fairly regularly.
And what about any advice for parents who are going through this in the initial stages?
It's not hard. I mean, it is hard because you've got to grieve. When you have your babe, you have all these big, great dreams, and then when you find out that there's something different going on, and the chances are that they aren't going to meet those dreams, you really do need to be given a place to grieve. To cry, you cry, and to be disappointed. It takes a bit to kind of open your eyes and see, actually, this is not all bad. I think it's all bad right now, but it's not all bad. There really are some beautiful things about kids that are different, because they do shine a light that nobody else ever gets to.